The king is dead. Long live the king. I'm kidding. The original Jurassic World Evolution isn't dead. It's still alive and kicking. We can still play and enjoy it, and I will on the channel. In fact, Jurassic World Evolution is celebrating its 3rd birthday today. So congratulations to the OG Jurassic World Evolution. Now move over, we're gonna talk about the sequel. Jurassic World Evolution 2. Will it make our dreams come true? Wow, I am a poetic genius. Shakespeare has been real quiet since I rhymed those 2 sentences. You know what happens when the new baby comes around. Everyone focuses on the younger sibling, giving them all the attention and forgetting about the older one, who has to then go into therapy to fix resentment issues and deal with anger outbursts that are really just a cry for attention. Was that just my family? Oh, okay. Sorry, sis. But let's not forget, the reason we're all so excited about this sequel is because we love Jurassic World Evolution. So let's not neglect her, especially not on her birthday. Alright, love, now move along, go play with your toys. Last Thursday at Summer Games Fest Live Kickoff, the sequel to Jurassic World Evolution was announced. While I was 100% convinced that a sequel would come, I did not expect it to be announced right now. So the hype was very, very real. It is very, very real. And I was just happy to get swept up in that and enjoy the moment. It's been a rough year. I feel like we've earned some happiness, so let's not take it for granted when it happens. But now that the news has settled, it's time to go into more depth and see if Jurassic World Evolution 2 is really set to soar to new heights. In this video, we're gonna look at the positive signs as well as some early warning signs. Because we do of course all remember the original trailer for the first Jurassic World Evolution and how different that was from what we actually got. That being said, even though the original was lacking, it's safe to say a lot of us still fell in love with it. I acknowledged the shortcomings of the original and I still loved it right from the get-go. So even if there is some stuff for Jurassic World Evolution 2 that's not ideal, that doesn't mean I'm not going to love it. Before we move on, let me preface this by saying there is not much to go off here at the moment. We don't have a look at actual gameplay yet, so both negatives and positives are based on minimal evidence. Keep that in mind while you're getting hyped, but also keep that in mind if you're being really negative. But like I said, we're just going to look at the signs. What points to possible pitfalls, and what points to this game potentially being worth all of this hype. And of course, this is all just my opinion, my analysis. And while I'm giving a balanced view of skepticism and optimism, I personally do lean more towards hopeful, and will do so until proven otherwise, because it's just a happier way to live, honestly. My therapist would be so proud. I invite you to share your own thoughts in the comment. Let me know what you think. What has you hyped, and what is making you skeptic? Before we even delve into the promotional material, there's already a positive note in the leak from way back when. The sequel has probably been in development since early 2019, because that's when news of the sequel first leaked. Now that was probably really early stages, since Frontier was still actively updating the original Jurassic World Evolution at that time. But early 2019 is when the game sprouted. And I think we can assume that when development for the OG JWE stopped, with the Return to Jurassic Park DLC in December of 2019, the Frontier JWE team was probably fully shifted over onto the sequel. Since Jurassic World Evolution 2 will likely release in the fall or at the end of the year, it has had more development time than the original game. Pretty much twice as much development time. And I'm hopeful that the original game also helped a ton with the learning curve and that they've learned from some mistakes that they made with that first game. Okay, so with that out of the way, a positive start, let's look at what they've actually shown us so far. Most of what I'm going to be talking about is not from the pre-rendered trailer, because I think those types of trailers are more to create a certain type of feeling as opposed to accurately represent gameplay. But there are 4 important takeaways that are good reason to get excited, and I want to address them here. but do take them with a grain of salt, because trailer got a trailer. Number one of the first things we see is that they do move in herds. We see herding behavior. Now, I know, the trailer for the original game also implied that we'd get herding behavior, and it wasn't until several months later that dinosaurs sorta herded together. Not really, sorta. What makes the herding behavior being in the game more likely is the information that we get on the Steam page for the game, because the information there does emphasize the authenticity of the dinosaurs and complexity in their behavior, so that reinforces what we see in the trailer. The fact that we have it black on white, or white on blue, is a very good sign. Watch them seek territory, fight, and interact with staggering realism. Just looking at the signs, that is one hell of a good sign. Back to the trailer. The next thing I noticed was that an escaped pteranodon free roams in the park/sanctuary. It doesn't just fly off to never be seen again, like they do in the original game. And what we also see are brachiosaurs feeding from trees. They're standing in a little cluster, but they are clearly not all centered around a feeder. We don't see a feeder. So this very strongly implies that herbivores just eat from natural vegetations. Feeders with supplemental foods for optimal health might be a thing purely for the gameplay aspect, but considering they hammered in the authenticity and staggering realism, it feels safe to assume that they just feed naturally. Hi, this is Editing Evo stepping in. I just noticed that that second brachie that you see at the bottom of the screen definitely is smaller than the ones that were in the foreground. So is that just the variation we get in size as we see in Prehistoric Kingdom? Dinosaurs come out in different shapes and sizes? Or are we seeing a JWE Brachiosaurus? I don't know, I just wanted to point it out because I noticed it right here. The final takeaway from the trailer is that it really sells the game as not just a park builder. That might be a negative for some, but I think it's an interesting angle for a better story and a better tie-in with where the franchise is going. We're not just seeing a park, we're seeing a preserve. I think that's going to provide a very different kind of gameplay, making that the first really big difference between the original game and the sequel. Even in Claire's Sanctuary, the point was to eventually have all the rescue dinosaurs in pens and on display for guests anyway. The sequel seems to provide something new, letting us manage a proper sanctuary. Again, text on the Steam page also backs this up, and is just a lot more positive signs. What it says on the Steam page is, immerse yourself in a compelling and original Jurassic World narrative set after earth-shattering events of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Lead efforts to control, conserve, and contain dinosaurs, rescue, and bioengineer dinosaurs. We won't just be hatching them, we'll be actively capturing them from the wild, as I had theorized and as I had hoped months ago when I did my wish list for the sequel in a video. There is the potential for a really interesting and progressive story here. The original game had a story campaign, but there wasn't much to it really, let's be honest. We were just taken through the islands, instructed to perform menial tasks along the way. The sequel being set after earth-shattering events has my imagination running wild, and I consider it a very positive sign. But that does bring us to the first big warning sign. The original game was also advertised to have an overarching story. Expand your islands and choose your own journey in an all-new narrative featuring iconic characters from across the franchise and decades of Jurassic lore at your fingertips. That's what it says on the Steam page for the original game. They didn't live up to that promise. You couldn't choose your own journey. You had to do certain contracts, and they always led you to the exact same place. And there wasn't much lore to be discovered either. So there is a history here of overselling the story aspect of the game. Please, I beg of thee, don't get hung up on a little icon. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying here. I'm not saying, oh, look at this is bad. I'm just saying that if we take off the hype goggles, there are some warning signs that we should take into account and keep an eye on, and hope that those warning signs will be refuted later on when more information about the game is shared. Let's go back to a positive sign and let's talk about something huge, and that is the creature roster at launch. Rescue and bioengineer more than 75 prehistoric species, including highly requested flying and marine reptiles. Over 75 species. That is a massive amount to start with. The original game started with 50 dinosaurs and through DLCs and updates only expanded to 67. Now we get more at the start than we got from the original in the end. I think we'll be seeing a lot of species from the OG game return for the sequel, and of course we're also getting new creatures on top of that, like the Amargasaurus, Coelophyses, and Mosasaurus, which have already been confirmed through trailers and the screenshots. And I mean, the Mosasaurus alone is another good reason for hype. And just to sneak in another reference to the trailer, it's either in open water or in an absolutely massive tank. I don't think it will be limited to a small pre-made tank, as in a pre-made building. But again, from a positive sign, we hop on over to a warning sign. 75 species? Okay, that's awesome. But at what cost? Is that going to have consequences in the form of them reusing animations from the original game? And are we going to again see a lot of copy-pasted animations across different species and stale combat mechanics where they arbitrarily trade blows? Because presumably that was all done for the original game to save time. I will say, as exciting as 75 species are, and it is very, very exciting, I'd rather have fewer species, but have them behave more uniquely and interestingly. This is definitely a big concern for me. Providing 75 species with a plethora of unique animations would be quite a feat, and I can only hope that they managed to pull that off. Frontier kindly sent me an asset pack with 2 screenshots that they didn't share on the website, and one of them is a beautiful shot of the Coelophysis, and another one is a shot of the Triceratops. Now, I don't want to talk about the Triceratops, I want to talk about what's off on the far right side. We have a pole sticking up with a security camera attached to it, and that might be a weird thing to get excited about, but I am happy to see that. What I also think it could possibly be as a function for within your park. From the original Jurassic Park novel, we know that there were motion sensors around the park that kept track of the dinosaurs' movement and of the population. And I think this might be the function of that. It's not just the security camera, but it's a motion sensor that counts how many dinosaurs are in your exhibit and where they're moving or migrating to if it's a very big exhibit. Is that possible to hint at baby dinosaurs? Because the motion sensors was the way, one of the ways, they found out that the dinosaurs were reproducing in the original Jurassic Park, because after a while there were more dinosaurs than there were supposed to be. So the motion sensors played a big role in that. So is that something that we're gonna have to keep track of? Like, we click on a motion sensor and it says there are 5 Triceratops in an exhibit when we only made 4? I don't know, but that's cool to speculate about. But what it is on face value, it's a security camera, and I hope we can click on it so we can just, you know, voyeuristically enjoy our enclosures. And it's something that has me excited. It's like a teeny tiny detail that might be overlooked, that might be negligible to a lot of people, but stuff like this does get me excited. The original Jurassic World Evolution suffered 2 key shortcomings, in my opinion at least. Oversimplified management, really barely any management at all, and pretty much zero customization, which made building creative parks that much more of a challenge. The information on the Steam page for the sequel addresses both those issues. Deeper management tools and flex your managerial muscle. Oh my god, I don't know why I said it like that. We have no inkling yet what that means exactly, but as I've been saying, all we can do right now is look at the signs, and I think this is a positive sign that they mention the management aspect of it specifically. I also noticed in an image that we have an ACU soldier patrolling the streets, and that makes me wonder, Is a certain percentage of bodies in the park just modeled to look like park staff, like we see in the current version of the game? Or will we actually be hiring staff based on the needs of the park? And if the latter is the case, what does an ACU soldier on foot do? I have so many questions, but that's all for another video. I think this is a positive sign that they mention deeper management tools. But right away, there are also two big warning signs when it comes to the management aspect. Firstly, if Frontier's idea of management is accurately reflected in Planet Zoo, then I am personally in trouble, because the whiny staff from Planet Zoo is one of the main reasons why I was never able to get into that game. So this is potentially a warning sign for me, but again, that might be personal. Another warning sign with regards to the management gameplay is the wide audience that the game tries to target. If it goes for the same target audience as the original game, that is. Even though it was targeted as a PEGI 16 game, it really lacked intricacy. I felt like it was designed to be playable by very young kids who typically don't care too much about management. Comments that I've gotten over the years confirm that very young kids, with the help of their parents, have been playing the game. If they want it to be accessible to such a young audience again, even though it's technically targeted at 16+, it is a warning sign. I can't ignore that. Because for kids, things need to be oversimplified, and then by definition, you can't have a very in-depth and complicated management aspect. Now, I personally don't mind the lack of management in the first game that much. It's easy and it's a mostly relaxing game to play with a low threshold, and I actually think that was one of its strengths, not just for kids but older fans as well. However, if you're gonna do a sequel, you gotta take the next step, so let's hope they do. With regards to creative building, they mention on the Steam page creative options and construct and customize new buildings. The original game had nothing in the way of creative options and customization, so at the very least, this hints at a step up from the original game. Now, am I expecting modular building like Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster? No, nothing hints at that right now. In fact, I have a warning sign to address right away. While they talk about creative options and customization, we don't see much of that yet, at least. The buildings in the trailer and promo shots all look like pre-made buildings with a very distinct footprint. Definitely nothing hints at modular building right now, and that's already a little bit disappointing, although not really surprising. What really gives me reason for concern is that we're already seeing repetition in the buildings, which leads me to worry that there aren't that many buildings in total. If you can't even fill one main street with all unique buildings, not just in looks but in function as well, that's worrisome. And on top of that, they are recycling buildings from Jurassic World / Jurassic World Evolution. A viewing platform I think is okay to reuse, but why is there an innovation center again? It's such a unique building. Why would that be replicated somewhere after the fall of Jurassic World? That's not really how architecture works typically. The optimist in me does force me to point out that the images could just be from early on in the campaign before we unlock all stuff, and development-wise they still have a few months to go. I don't see people giving Prehistoric Kingdom any backlash for having so few buildings right now, knowing that the game is still in development and more is being added. But an undeniable warning sign nonetheless. I've only found one thing that might be a decoration. Other than that, nothing. I have scoured all of the promotional images that we got, the trailer. I don't see anything in terms of a individually placeable decorative item. All of the decoration we see is just part of the buildings, you know, they're on top of the concrete footprint. So, yikes, that's a big yikes, because that is probably one of the most important things we've been asking for the past 3 years, just decorations. Just a couple. But I don't see any of that. That is a big warning sign. Now, even though there are no clues yet, or at least no strong evidence yet that modular building is going to be a thing, or even that decorations are going to be a thing, that doesn't mean that won't eventually happen, of course. But Rudy Rencamel, a primarily Planet Zoo channel on YouTube, did a really cool analysis of the foliage that we see in the screenshots for Jurassic World Evolution 2 and the foliage that you have in Planet Zoo. And he is able to show that a lot of the assets from Planet Zoo have been carried over into Jurassic World Evolution 2. So they are using the same assets, which makes it very clear that at least the foliage is individually placeable and it's not just going to be a brush. A positive sign is that we are getting multiple biomes. Biome fatigue was a real thing for me in the original Jurassic World Evolution. Given that they wanted some measure of realism, it makes sense that a tropical island exclusively has a tropical biome because, well, tropical island got a tropical island. But as a game, you want to provide something refreshing once in a while, and the difference between the islands of the 5 deaths just wasn't enough. It wasn't hitting the spot. The Steam page describes that we are getting biomes ranging from forests to deserts. We've seen the forest, we've seen the desert, we've seen the two extremes of that range, but there are more biomes in between, and I am very excited to see what those will be and where in the world this game will be taking us. Work alongside iconic characters from the films, including Dr. Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, and Claire Dearing, Bryce Dallas Howard. I'm assuming D.B. Wong is coming back as Dr. Wu, and other than him, I'm curious to see who else they might bring back. Dominion has a huge cast of characters returning from earlier installments, so who knows? We might be getting appearances from Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler again. We might even be hearing from Timmy and Lex. But at the very least, Goldblum is coming back, and that's just great. He's become like the funny uncle of the franchise. I love him. Speaking of Jeff Goldblum, aka Dr. Ian Malcolm, we are getting a brand new game mode in Jurassic World Evolution 2, and it is potentially one of the most interesting bits of information yet. As described on the Steam page, play with Chaos Theory. Chaos Theory mode lets you play through key moments of your favorite films with a twist. Experience what-if scenarios from iconic Jurassic World and Jurassic Park films, with each level set across eras and locations from all 5 movies. Immerse yourself at the heart of the Jurassic World franchise and see how things turn out when you are put at the helm of managing new challenges with unpredictable outcomes. It's still quite vague, but my mind is running amok. I'm hoping this means that we get handed over the keys for the original Jurassic Park and we have to turn that into a successful park, and we get missions akin to The Lost World where we have to retrieve dinosaurs for a park in San Diego, or instead choose to sabotage the mission and set the dinosaurs free. But I am super hopeful about this game mode and very, very curious to learn more about it. For me, a big warning sign is the jarring difference in graphics between the pre-rendered trailer and the screenshots we see on the website. Now, this is always the case, and everyone knows this. Pre-rendered trailers are not an accurate representation. However, the gap does feel particularly huge right now. I hope that the end result inches a little closer to what we see in the trailer. I hope that the fact that it's also coming to the older generation of consoles isn't going to hold it back. And I'm talking about the power overall actually, not just the graphics, but also, for example, the map size. The map size was a big point of criticism for the original, and I think a lot of that can be traced back to the console versions. The bigger the park, the more elements need to be rendered, the more AI needs to be kept track of, and a console just isn't as powerful as a gaming PC. I am expecting some compromises for the sake of console gamers, and as a PC gamer, I would selfishly say that that kinda sucks. But at the same time, I do want as many people as possible to enjoy this game, and not everyone can afford an above average gaming PC, so at the same time, I can't really actually be mad about it. Now, speaking of the game also coming to console, that is great news for console players, but I think most PC players will share in my apprehension? Because for the original game, that seemed to be the excuse for why a lot of things weren't possible in the game. For this point, I'm not talking about GPU power of PC versus console, but more the user interface and what's possible within the game, as in terms of gameplay. Typically, when a game is PC only, there's more they can do in terms of gameplay complexity. The precision of a mouse and near limitless variation in commands you can do with a keyboard just functions better for tycoon-styled games. So is that going to affect how in-depth the management is and how many customization options we get? I think yes. Hopefully, though, this can be minimized. Frontier did release Planet Coaster to console, and while I have no experience with that game on console, it does show that more complicated tycoon games can be adapted to console. The final warning sign I have gleaned from the information we have so far are the dinosaur skins. If you know me, you know I'm big on skins. Seriously, put the lotion in the basket! What we've seen so far is underwhelming? It's not bad as long as this is the base level and every other kind of skin we see is more interesting than this. For example, this bland-looking Triceratops, while Jurassic World accurate, bores me to death. The other skin we see for the Triceratops is much better already, but this skin should have been the lowest end of the spectrum in terms of patterning and colorization and visual interest. I fear we are going to get a similar situation as with Jurassic World Evolution 1, where most skins are just kinda plain. We don't need Beast of Bermuda skins, but look at the dinosaur skins in Prehistoric Kingdom. There is so much going on there. A lot of imagination and creativity has gone into those skins, and I hope we get some of that in Jurassic World Evolution 2, but so far, it doesn't look like it. The final sign that I could find, I really need to stop rhyming. The last sign that I wanted to share with you is a positive one because of course I want to end this on a positive note, and that is a super cool little detail that I noticed in one of the images. Tours can cross over guest paths. I think that is a positive sign in and of itself. It's great that that is going to be a standard function in the game, but looking at the larger picture, I also feel like this might be a sign that they have listened to the feedback and have taken at least some of it to heart, because I know the request for tours to be able to cross paths came up repeatedly and someone even made a mod for it. Seeing this in the game makes me hopeful that some of the other requests we have been making over the past 3 years have not fallen on deaf ears either. This is my look at the information we have so far, optimism versus skepticism. Personally, I choose optimism. I think it's okay to give into the hype and just enjoy it, as long as you're aware of and accept that a game can fall short of our expectations. We are going to keep a close eye on all of the development for Jurassic World Evolution 2, and I will share everything with you. So if you're excited about this game or just curious to see where it heads, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in a comment down below if you choose optimism or skepticism, and if you feel particularly generous on this day, give the video a like on your way down. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, enjoy the game. Not yet, but, you know, soon.